Well, Justin Trudeau had the world watching at Davos this week, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, tension between the country's east and west surfaced today. What could that mean? Andrew is in Toronto, Chantal is in Montreal, and Althea Raj joins us this week from Ottawa. You got a hint of it in the newscast. We had the Montreal area mayors, led by Denis Coderre, the mayor of Montreal, saying that they were against the Energy East pipeline. That immediately brought response from a number of Western leaders, Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi, saying basically that Coderre really didn't know what he was talking about in giving his reasons for being against the pipeline. And this from the Saskatchewan Premier, Brad Wall. He went to Twitter and said this: "I trust Montreal area mayors will politely return their share of $10 billion in equalization supported by West." This in relation to the pipeline, a decision on their part. What does this tell us, Andrew, in terms of, I mean, is this like the old days here, the east-west tensions?
It certainly tells you why you don't want to have these decisions made by premiers or mayors. This is why we have a federation. This is why we have a federal government, a federal authority to make these kinds of decisions that involve cross-country considerations. And secondly, it seems to me it says why you want to take it out of the hands of practicing politicians and give it to something like a National Energy Board, so these things can be treated with some degree of dispassion, because this is certainly amping up the tensions in ways that are not helpful to anybody. And
we should say at this point that the federal government hasn't made a decision on that, and it's kind of unclear exactly where Justin Trudeau stands on it. Chantal, what do you think was going through Denis Coderre's mind here? Why the play on this?
It wasn't just Denis Coderre. He was speaking for 82 municipalities that account for more than half of Quebecers. So if Brad Wall thinks this is not good news, he's right. It's not good news for the Quebec government, and it's not good news for Justin Trudeau for two reasons. Up to now, the opposition, the vocal opposition to the Energy East pipeline in Quebec centered around the Parti québécois and environmentalist and First Nations group. But these 82 municipalities, they are the core vote of both the federal and the Liberal Party, Quebec Liberal Party in Quebec. So this has just crossed, this opposition has just crossed the sovereigntist federalist divide in a bad way. Add to that that it's not just Quebec. There is more than rampant opposition to this pipeline in Ontario, with some fairly official commissions in Ontario saying there are no benefits to Ontario's hope, and New Brunswick really wants it. So I'm guessing Mr. Trudeau's government got its work cut out for it, trying to find an accommodation between all these interests on this pipeline.
We should also say that this pipeline, I mean, it already exists, right? It's carrying gas at the moment. They want to switch it to oil. That is one of the concerns, obviously, in terms of oil in a pipeline and on the environmental side. And the arguments come into what's safer. Is it safer to move oil by rail? Is it safer to move it by pipeline? There's a lot of different arguments at play here. Althea, what is your take on what happened today?
Well, I wondered if they waited until Justin Trudeau left the country to start this.
For the record, who was on a plane back from Davos at that point.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think there's some interesting parts at play. I mean, and it's kind of like how you see the country, right? I mean, do you think that your local politicians, your municipal leaders, should be able to, set the terms for things that might affect your environment, or do you view the country, which is, I think, is what Brad Wall was getting to, as a whole, and that the parts should support one another? That's not what he was getting at. Clearly, he's playing to a local domestic audience. And both he and Brian Jean, the leader of the Alberta Wild Rose, made similar comments in that vein, essentially talking about Denis Coderre and the Montreal mayors as being hypocrites, for allowing, for example, raw sewage, but not allowing, something that was the equivalent in their neck of the woods. To me, philosophically, I think it's an interesting discussion, and I don't know that everyone really agrees on how the parts should support each other.
I just wonder, though, this has been an issue for some time. It pops up every once in a while, but in some ways, in terms of a big issue, it's been a kind of sleeper, and I'm wondering, does this have the potential of becoming now a major issue between different parts of the country surrounding this decision. Andrew, what do you think?
Well, sure. I mean, because we're running out of options, let's put it that way, for the pipeline to transport that oil. So we had the fiasco over Northern Gateway. We've had the fiasco over the Keystone. This was the last option available to us. We cannot run a country. Althea laid out the issue. I'll take one side of it. You cannot run a country where every locality and every province and every mayor is deciding this for themselves, and tit for tat and retaliation. We will break down pretty quickly in terms of the internal workings of our economy if everyone's trying to score points off each other, and as was the case with the British Columbia government demanding their share of the revenues, et cetera. There are or may be legitimate environmental concerns surrounding this, which is why you have a National Energy Board to look into these things. So it is unhelpful, it seems to me, for the mayors to be weighing in this. I know they have legitimate concerns, but they are not actually in a position to decide this. I suppose they're trying to ramp up the pressure on the Trudeau government, but the Trudeau government should be able to say, we're going to rely on the good judgment of the experts advising the National Energy Board.
Chantal?
Yes, except that Justin Trudeau just spent how many years, a couple at least, saying that social acceptability, social license was essential for these projects to go forward. And what happened today is the mayors that represent half of Quebecers taking him up at his words. So it's going to be very hard for this Prime Minister, who has gone around saying social license, social license, social license, to suddenly say that people who are speaking for so many people do not amount to an objection to getting a social license for a pipeline project. And that hole he dug himself in.
Yep.
All right.
But he's also promised to reform the National Energy Board. So he's kicked this can already several months, if not years down the line.
Yes.
Okay. Well, obviously, we're going to be talking about this one more into the future. Talking right now in Switzerland, in Davos, is the Prime Minister has been, with a lot of powerful and wealthy and famous people over the last few days. He gave a speech yesterday. They got a lot of attention in terms of coverage. I'm going to give you one highlight of it, and then we're going to break it down to say, does it really tell us something about the direction that he wants to take this government? And here it is.
Our recent election reminded us all that people can respond to a positive, inclusive vision of society. My predecessor wanted you to know Canada for its resources. Well, I want you to know Canadians for our resourcefulness.
All right. Chantal, what does that tell us? What does that and the rest of the speech tell us?
Okay, two things. The introduction to the speech, which we didn't see, where Justin Trudeau was presented as the prototype of tomorrow's leaders, I thought was kind of overblown, but also very interesting. I'm not sure that the sentence about my predecessor wanted you to know about resources, etc., was all that wise, because Stephen Harper at Davos was known for more than just saying Canada is about resources. Remember, that's where he announced that he would put limits on old age security. Mm-hmm. But to illustrate that Canada was taking steps to avoid becoming what has happened in Greece, and got a lot of positive points at that forum for the handling of the economic crisis. But it does tell you that the Liberals, and that's no news, are branding Canada differently.
Althea?
So that had 2 points, and I'm going to have 3 if I can squeeze them in. One, part of the speech was a sit-down with a CNN, Fareed Zakaria, a CNN journalist, and he asked him pointedly, why are you pulling out the jets from the war against ISIS? And Mr. Trudeau seemed, again, to have difficulty to answer, and to me that shows that the international community also has questions about why Mr. Trudeau is taking that action. 2, he was asked specifically, do you have concerns that there is a global recession coming on here? And he said that he is really optimistic. And I think that made him sound like someone who's a little bit out of touch, not just with the problems at home, but with the problems abroad. And 3, he kept talking about diversity. Like diversity was this magic solution that was going to raise the dollar and bring back the price of oil. And even if he may not have the answers, I don't know that simplifying it by saying diversity is the engine of creativity, all the wonderful things that happen because of diversity is really something that people really at home wanted to hear.
Well, they've taken 5 points, Andrew. I guess there's nothing left for you.
Mostly the speech was pretty boilerplate stuff, the kind of thing you'd hear in a Chamber of Commerce, luncheon. I thought the line you quoted was revealing and not necessarily in a good way. One is it's kind of graceless to be scoring points off your predecessor in an international forum. I don't think that's usually looked well upon. But secondly, this contrast between resources and resourcefulness, it plays to, if it doesn't reveal an attitude, certainly plays to an attitude of, first of all, that resources are just kind of, we're just dumb, pulling stuff out of the ground. There's no ingenuity involved in it, which is simply not true. Secondly, that this is somehow beneath us, that we want to move away from resources because those aren't really befitting of a first world country. We want to be in smart things like services, et cetera. And thirdly, that this process of moving from resources into other sectors isn't something that can happen just because, for example, oil goes down to $30 and the dollar goes down to 70 cents, and it's other sectors get a lift out of that. But there's some sort of process, some kind of government-directed process that has to drive it, which is very much part of the ideology of the Trudeau government. So it revealed certain mindsets that, I guess, let's hark back to our previous conversation. If the West and if the oil-producing sectors were hoping that he's going to go to bat for them on things like the pipelines, you'd look at that line, you wouldn't say that that was particularly top of his mind.
All right. I've only got a couple of minutes left, but I want to introduce another topic. It's Tom Mulcair and his decision that he made clear earlier this week. Once again, he tried to make clear. Here it is.
I'm heartened by the store of goodwill I have found for the NDP, for our policies, and for our work across the country since the election. It's been 3 months almost to the day. I'm going to continue that hard work, taking nothing for granted. I'm going to continue to work with the parliamentary wing. I'm also going to be meeting with the executive of the party over the weekend, and I'm going to be off to points west to continue the hard work that I've already started in the wake of the election.
All right. This comes, a clear indication from Thomas Mulcair that he's not going anywhere. This comes after a period of weeks of, some rumbling out there. Nobody taking a public position on it, but some rumbling about whether or not he should be staying. And certainly some columns written, Chantal, you wrote one of them this week, that it was time to move on. What are we hearing as a result of what's happened this week with his decision, in spite of all that he's staying? Althea, you start us, and keep in mind 1 point.
A lot of people are very, very upset with Mr. Mulcair, but there is no apparent obvious movement to try to push him out. And I think that if he does what he has started to do, which is reach out to the grassroots and make them feel included, and if they hear from him in April that he takes responsibility, which he has not shown yet, for the errors of the campaign and shows some contrition, I think he will survive.
Andrew.
I think they're setting themselves up for a very nasty and divisive fight because he didn't take the hint. I mean, the question is, what's the argument for him staying on? Is it that, well, he may not be a real New Democrat, but he can win? Well, he's actually has shown he's not particularly good at that. They ran a very poor campaign. He did not connect with the public. But maybe your argument is, well, maybe he's not that attractive politically, but he represents who we are. We're loyal to him out of, history, et cetera. Well, that's not the case either. They brought him in to win. So the argument seems to default to, I ain't going anywhere, and it'll be really nasty and ugly to get rid of me. And I think maybe some people are going to be willing to take him up on that bet.
All right, you get the last word, Chantal.
I think they'll probably give him a pass in April, notwithstanding all that Andrew has said, which I totally agree with. I don't expect him to be around for the next election. I think many of them are going to believe that even if they give him a pass in April, they can still dispose of him after that, and they're probably right to think so.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Well, 3 interesting things to keep our eyes on the next little while. House resumes next week, and we'll be obviously talking about that as well. Andrew in Toronto, Chantal in Montreal. Althea joining us this week from Ottawa. Thanks, Althea.